right, well, let's get started. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are recording this webinar and we are live on Facebook. My name is Greta Zaro and I'm the Organizing Director for World Beyond War. Thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, which is all about our chapters. And we have 3 of our chapter coordinators from around the world with us tonight to talk about what is a chapter and what they're doing. And we're here to discuss with you, if you want to start a chapter in your community, how you can do it, and we can answer your questions for you tonight. World Beyond War is a global grassroots network of volunteers, activists, and allied organizations around the world advocating for the abolition of war and its replacement with what we call an alternative global security system based on peace, demilitarization, and nonviolence. And these webinars are available for free because of the generous support of our donors. We have small dollar donors from around the world who give as little as $5 a month. And thanks to their support, that helps keep these webinars going. You can become a monthly donor if you go to our website, WorldBeyondWar.org/donate. I also want to introduce Mark Elliott Stein, who is a board member at World Beyond War. And he is here to assist me today with any technical difficulties and to help facilitate the Q&A. Mark, do you want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Oh, hi, glad to be here and meet you all. I'm coming in from New York City and looking forward to tonight's talk. Greta will be explaining later how to ask questions, but we'll be taking questions both here and in the chat room here and on Facebook. And I'll be trying to kind of coordinate that tonight.
Great. Yeah, so at the moment, everyone should be muted except for the panelists, and you'll have a chance to unmute and talk towards the end of the webinar. So I'm now going to introduce our 3 panelists. The first panelist is Liz Remmerswaal. Liz is the New Zealand chapter coordinator for World Beyond War. She is a mother, journalist, environmental activist, and a former politician, having served 6 years on the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. The daughter and granddaughter of soldiers who fought other people's wars in far-flung places, she never got over war's stupidity and she became a pacifist instead. Liz is an active Quaker and a former co-vice president of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in New Zealand. Liz prefers a creative and community approach to peacemaking, starting from within, and has enjoyed such activities as biking to the gates of the Pine Gap American Military Spy Base in Alice Springs, Australia, planting an olive tree for peace in the Peace Palace in The Hague, singing peace songs outside military bases, and making tea parties besides warships during New Zealand Navy's 75th birthday. In 2017, she was awarded the Sonia Davies Peace Award. Liz lives with her husband on the east coast of New Zealand. Liz, would you like to say hi?
Kia ora, tātou. Hello, everybody from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Nice to meet you.
Great, thanks. Our next guest is Al MIDI. Over his lifetime, Al has participated in a wide variety of social justice issues. In 2008, he completed the 9-month Just Faith program, which focuses on building a more just and peaceful world, and discerned that he wanted to focus on issues of nonviolence, peace, and alternatives to war. He is very active in Pax Christi and with World Beyond War. He serves as the coordinator for the Central Florida chapter of World Beyond War. He is also a founding member of a new chapter of Veterans for Peace. Al fulfilled a high school dream of receiving an appointment to attend the U.S. Air Force Academy. As a cadet, he became disillusioned about the morality and effectiveness of war and U.S. militarism, and he received an honorable discharge from the academy. He completed a Master of Social Work degree and spent his working career as a founder and executive with local health plans. He now resides with his wife in the Villages, Florida. His 4 adult children and their spouses and 10 children keep Al and his wife busy and traveling. Welcome, Al.
Thank you. It's great to be here and welcome to everybody.
Our next guest is Farraan Galen. Farraan works in the industrial automation industry as an automation engineer with a background in electrical control systems. He has been a peace and social justice activist since 1985 and has recently furthered his education by completing a certificate in international development from UBC in 2012. and completing a master's degree in peace building from Royal Roads University in 2016. He is currently the co-chair of the Vancouver chapter of Canadian Peace Initiative. He is also the chapter coordinator for World Beyond War's Metro Vancouver chapter and is focused on developing a culture of peace in Canada and around the world. His passion is to make the world a better place by focusing on resolving problems at the root cause level in a sustainable way. His goal is to have society progress so that war is no longer considered an acceptable activity for humans. Born in Newcastle, England, and living in the Metro Vancouver region since 1973, Farraan currently lives in North Delta with his wife and 3 children. Thanks for joining us, Farraan.
Thank you, and it's great to be here.
All right, so I am now going to show a short PowerPoint presentation just to talk quickly through some kind of logistics of what is a chapter, what are some examples of what chapters have done, and then we'll turn to the chapter coordinators to hear directly from them. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see a slide that says Chapters 101 webinar?
Yes.
We see it on the webinar. We do not see it on Facebook. Oh, I think it's just coming in. Great. It's here on Facebook as well. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Great, thanks. So again, my name is Greta Zaro. I'm the organizing director for World Beyond War. I'm based in New York State, but I work with our chapter coordinators around the world. I work remotely from my home and get to communicate with all of our chapters around the world. We have 15 chapters currently in 8 countries, with more chapters in development. This map shows our membership around the world. So we have members in 175 countries around the world, and we want to have chapters in every one of those countries eventually. That is our goal. So these are members that have signed our Declaration of Peace, which is really the foundation of our work. So what is a chapter? A chapter advances World Beyond War's mission, which is to abolish war. We do not support any forms of war. We always take a nonviolent approach in our work, and we do not support any types of weapons or any type of militarism. So chapters host events, campaigns, and activities that are focused on our 3 pillars. Those pillars are peace education, weapons divestment, and closing military bases. Chapters help to collect signatures for the Declaration of Peace that I mentioned earlier. And chapters have to organize a minimum of 4 events per year. So we have some chapters that just meet on a quarterly basis and just meet the minimum, which is perfectly fine. And we have other chapters like the Central Florida chapter and the Fort Myers, Florida chapter that meet every single month. So it just depends on, your chapter's capacity and interests. Chapters also help to organize occasional fundraisers. So one of our chapters in Canada right now is preparing a fundraiser for September 21st, the International Day of Peace. They're going to have a peace concert with activities and games and presentations, and also help to fundraise for World Beyond War and to support their chapter activities as well as the international organization. Another activity that chapters can help with is translation. So especially for our chapters, halfway across the world, this is really important to translate our materials, starting with our book, The Alternative Global Security System, which is the foundation of our work, along with our fact sheets and other materials like our study guide. And another thing that chapters can help with is research and writing projects. So I mentioned we have various fact sheet series, for example, or articles on our website. And so we're always looking for volunteers, whether they're affiliated with the chapter or not, to help us with those research and writing projects. Okay, so the next slide here talks about some chapter benefits. So my job is, my part-time job is to support the chapters. So I provide you with training. I am here to answer your questions. That is my job. So, chapters should never hesitate to reach out to me with questions about how do I organize an event, or how do I organize a divestment campaign? Or for example, Al from Florida, he'll say, you know, we really want to do an event about the environmental footprint of war. What do you have on that topic? And I'll send him all of our free resources on that topic, our webinars, fact sheets, articles, PowerPoints, etc. And he can look through that material and use it for his chapter events. We also provide free and discounted books and online courses for our chapters. Another part of my job is assisting chapters with promotion. So not just with organizing the event and figuring out the programming for it, but also the promotional aspect of recruiting volunteers and recruiting participants for your chapter events. So I help to publicize the events on our website, through our email list, on social media, and various other online platforms. And beyond promoting it to people in your community and recruiting chapter members in your community, we can also broadcast what you're doing around the world, which is really the benefit of working with an international organization like ours that has 100 members in 175 countries, is that we can connect you with different members around the world to share lessons learned and strategies, and to just find camaraderie and support. All right, so now I'd like to show this short slideshow of some pictures of our chapters, just to give you a visual sense of what our chapters are doing. So this first picture is Liz from New Zealand, who we introduced a moment ago. And here she is tabling and collecting signatures for the Peace Pledge. The next chapter here is Barry from Ireland, and he is protesting the US military's use of Shannon Airport. Every year, the US sends tens of thousands of troops through Shannon Airport in Ireland. And we are actually hosting our annual conference, No War 2019, in Ireland, in Limerick, this October 5 and 6. And Barry has been doing so much work organizing this conference coming up in less than a month, and we hope you can be there. If you go to our website, you can learn more about the conference and sign up. And here he is protesting US troops in Ireland. This next picture is also of Liz in New Zealand. So Liz is running a campaign to petition the New Zealand government. The New Zealand government is planning to purchase 4 warplanes, which would be a multi-billion-dollar plan. And so we're showcasing this would be a waste of money, that we don't need these warplanes in New Zealand. And here she is delivering hundreds of petition signatures that she collected and holding a rally and a peace picnic at Parliament. This is our Japan chapter. Joe, our Japan chapter coordinator, is on the left. And he organized a really interesting event last November for the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day. He actually organized a photography exhibit and a lecture with a well-known photojournalist in Japan about Japan's manufacturing of poison gas in the 1930s, exposing that they were secretly manufacturing this poison gas. And this is our Berlin chapter doing a rally in solidarity with Venezuela a couple months ago. As you can see, they have the World Beyond War banner, which they have translated into German. This is our Philadelphia chapter. So they recently hosted a book talk with a well-known local author, and that was a way to bring in some new faces to their chapter by publicizing this event. It was free and open to the public. So the event started out with a book talk. And then after that, we had a discussion of what the chapter was doing. And in particular, the chapter is working on a divestment campaign at the city level. So I think that was a really unique combination of having this, well-known author, bringing in a crowd. We had over 40 people there, and then being able to give people some action steps afterwards. This is our chapter in Spain. They are currently using our book, which they're holding up in the picture, along with their blue peace scarves. And they're doing a study guide, a study group, using our study guide, I think on a monthly basis. So they're reading through the book together, and they're using our study guide, which has discussion questions and action ideas and short video clips that accompany every section of the book. So it's a great way to read through the book as a group and discuss it together. And this is Farraan with our Vancouver chapter. They recently held an event with one of our guest speakers, Tamara Lawrence. She's on our speakers bureau. We have a speakers bureau of speakers around the world. So they brought her in for this event. Also, great way to have a well-known speaker to bring in a large crowd, and in this case, to discuss the environmental footprint of war. This is another one of our Canadian chapters. Canada is taking the lead with its number of chapters. This is in South Georgian Bay in Ontario, and they're hosting their kickoff event, which was a couple of months ago. They've also been using the book and the study guide that I mentioned earlier to do regular meetings and discussion groups. Okay, so that's all that I have at the moment. All right. So let's move on to talk to our chapter coordinators and hear directly from them. Al, can you start us off and tell us why you became a chapter coordinator?
Sure. I moved to Florida about 3 years ago, and I retired then. And I determined that I wanted to spend at least as much time in service and causes and other kinds of ministry as I do in recreation. I found that I am very busy in these causes, and particularly World Beyond War. I had been involved with Pax Christi for quite a few years, and we found that we had a variety of social justice issues that we were involved in. My focus, I wanted to be focused specifically on the issues of war and peace and the abolishment of war. And World Beyond War is the organization that is committed to that goal. I found when I moved here that no one else was doing this, and so I got in touch with World Beyond War and said, let's start a chapter here in Central Florida in this land of a whole bunch of retirees.
Thanks, Al. Liz, I'll turn to you. What inspired you to become a chapter coordinator?
Hi, everyone. Well, I was asked to, actually. I was at a conference and at Women's International League for Peace and Freedom conference in Chicago. I was doing some peace education. I had won a peace award, and so Leah Bolger, who's the president of World Beyond War, she sort of shoulder tapped me and said, Liz, will you be the country coordinator for New Zealand? And I was thrilled to be asked, and because it just seemed an opportunity to link in with the global network as well as be very active in my own country.
Great, thanks. And Farraan, why did you become a chapter coordinator in Vancouver?
Well, I've been part of the peace movement for quite a while, doing different activities like rallies and things. And then I got involved with the Canadian Peace Initiative. I was kind of watching World Beyond War the last few years, and then had an opportunity to meet with David Swanson a couple of years ago when he was at an event near Bellingham area in a church there. And then again, I kind of kept watching, and it seemed to stick out as the right sort of movement in terms of the focus area of abolishing warfare, and something that can connect with other groups and build a coalition. So those are kind of my interests: abolishing war and building a coalition. So it kind of fit in with that. And then I went to their conference in Toronto in 2018 in the fall, and that's where I decided that I'm gonna start a chapter in the Metro Vancouver area, and also went to their Dublin conference also last year, and just basically started up after that.
Thanks. Yeah, I remember how determined you were at the Toronto conference. You were like, anyone from Vancouver, come meet me. All right, turning back to Al. Al, can you give our listeners some examples of what activities your chapter has been working on?
Sure. We have participated in a variety of protests and demonstrations regarding, here issues in the United States related to immigration and gun control and so on. But our organization decided that we want to focus on education. So we, as Greta mentioned, we hold monthly meetings and we do a presentation at each of those meetings with either something that Greta provides to us, or we get one of our own speakers or somebody else from within the villages here who has a background in peace efforts. Some of the topics we've covered in our monthly meetings are for example, the environmental impact of war and militarism. We had a debate, a video presentation on whether war is ever justifiable. We did a presentation on the employment effects of spending on the military. So those are the kinds of things that our chapter does at our monthly meetings. Next week, we have our monthly meeting. Our presentation will be on the debunking the myths of war with some material that Greta has provided to us. I also, because we are a large retirement community, I and some others make ourselves available to a wide variety of clubs. Clubs such as, we have a club called Civil Discourse, we have a club called the Free Thinkers, and a philosophy club, and so on. And those provide me with opportunities to get the message out about what we are doing, but also to get out the message about the futility of war and violence. So we're doing that. I also want to mention that we're excited because in January, David Hartso, one of the co-founders of World Beyond War and the author of Waging Peace and a lifelong peace advocate, it will be coming to Central Florida, and we're excited about that, hosting him, and we're hoping for a huge crowd to hear from David Hartso. By the way, I'd also be happy to make any of our materials available. Greta does that at the website. So anything that we do here, you're welcome to use.
Great, thanks, Al. Liz, what about you? Can you share some highlights from what you're working on in New Zealand?
Yes, so it's been quite a journey. We've been quite busy here, and one particular thing, and I'd just like to say welcome to Patricia from Palmerston North, who last year we were working on a weapons expo response together. As you probably know, there's one in London at the moment, the Arms Fair, and so every year they come to New Zealand as well, our little peaceful country, and they come to promote all the things to do with that. So we decided to work with some of the other peace groups and peace action groups and did a number of things. We held a forum to talk about some of the issues. We showed a film, actually the Scarred Lands and Wounded Lives film to the public. There was an interfaith community. There was things in the square. We made sandwiches for one of the rallies, all of that kind of thing, as well as had some music groups singing songs, etc. So that's one aspect. I also try and do talks to groups such as University of the Third Age and the environmental groups. There's a huge linking between the environment and war making and the effects of war on the environment. So, and while the peace movement is maybe not as strong, the environmental movements are pretty stronger there. So because of my background in environmental politics, I'm very keen to link in with those groups. I mentioned films. There's another film that we're busy promoting, which is an incredible New Zealand film called Soldiers Without Guns, and it's about how peace was brokered in Bougainville in the South Pacific through the New Zealand Māori division of the army, going into Bougainville without any weapons and creating a peace there. So that's an incredible film, which we're promoting. So we're big fan of collaborating with other organisations, and especially in my case, I'm a Quaker, but working with other faith-based peace groups such as Pax Christi and the Anglicans, pacifist Anglicans, the interfaith, Buddhist, Baha'i. It's a tremendous place to start, and we suffered a tragedy earlier this year with this terrible massacre in a mosque in Christchurch. And so that has, in a way, has created even more awareness of the importance of really working for peace and understanding each other. I just want, and on a personal note, I'm involved with nonviolent communication because I feel it needs to permeate every single level. So I try and keep myself operating and as the best that I can, and very good communication, and keep on going on that direction as well.
Great, thanks, Liz. Farraan?
So we've had our first activity in June of this year, and that was with the guest speaker that came here, Tamara Lawrence, and the focus was on militarism and the environment. And so we had a good turnout. It was a good event. You saw the picture in the slideshow earlier. And then on August 5th, we had two events that day, one in the early afternoon and one in the evening, where David Swanson was actually here in Vancouver. And we had David speak at both of the events. And it was a great turnout, a lot of interaction with the audience was one of the comments that David mentioned to me. Then just last weekend, I was at a Unitarian Church's Social Justice Committee, and we had a presentation there with the Canadian Peace Initiative and World Beyond War, both co-presenting what we're doing. And one of our chapter members, Lynn Armstrong, she arranged that. And one of the activities Lynn wants to actually lead and get involved with is these study session for the alternative guide. So we discussed that on the weekend. So at some point she'll be leading that activity. And another possible project is the divestment campaign that we've discussed, and hopefully we can get going on that as well.
Great, thank you. All right, going back around our circle, back to Al. Al, what is your top recommendation for someone who wants to start up a chapter in their community?
My top if I only get one, my top recommendation is to use Greta and all of the resources that World Beyond War either has available right now at the website, or that Greta and David and others know of lots of resources that can help us at the chapter level, either in putting together presentations or distributing materials and so on. So use Greta. That would be my top recommendation. I have some others, but
you can give some others too. We have time. We're doing good on time.
all right. Well, I would say also Greta sets up these chapter coordinator calls, and I find I would encourage other chapter coordinators to participate in those calls if at all possible, because I find that I get inspired from people around the world hearing what's going on, and that's a great source of, as I said, inspiration. The last thing I would mention is don't get discouraged. We started with, a few of us. My first presentation was at a Unitarian Universalist church, and we got 4 or 5 people to sign up on the email list. And now we have, Greta, 174 people on our email listserv. We don't get all of them to attend meetings. I wish we did, but we're getting there, and we're slowly growing. So don't get discouraged.
Yeah, just to comment quickly on that. So if you want to become a chapter coordinator and you reach out to me, like I mentioned, we have membership in 175 countries worldwide. So we can start by emailing our existing membership in your region and inviting them to your first event. And that's how most of our chapters start. And then you start building your list by doing networking with other groups, as our chapter coordinators have mentioned. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach of trying to activate our existing membership in your community at the same time, networking with environmental groups and faith groups and neighborhood associations, and building your list with those groups as well. All right, Liz, what is your recommendation for someone who wants to start a chapter in their area?
Oh, I would say definitely do it. It's so much, it's such a great thing to do. It's so much fun. Just, you know, get out there and be bold. Get a t-shirt, like, you know, I always like to put on the t-shirt, and I printed myself a little card because it's really handy when I go to a lot of conferences and, you know, meetings and stuff. I try and take my clipboard with so people can just really sign up easily. I'm just really terrible. I just kind of, you know, I just use every opportunity to network for World Beyond War. And I think the personal touch is what's appreciated. Most of all, I think ask people to join or ask people to help or something. I see we've got John Rohr in this call from Vermont, who's on our international coordinating committee, and he does a lot of great work in the community. So hopefully John will be able to come and give some good ideas, for example, about the peace film festivals that he's been involved with. So yeah, and I love what Al was saying about the retirement places. I think, you know, retired people have got a lot to offer the peace movement. So it's great to have people like Al involved.
Great. And Liz, you're going to Iran next week, right?
Yeah, so I've been involved with Code Pink, which is an amazing American women's peace organization. You know, it's hard to travel these days with a clear conscience because of the carbon emissions, especially from where I live. It's a long way from anywhere. But it seems important to do this work, to make the linkages with other people. And so Code Pink is a wonderful organization. And after the Toronto conference, I went to Washington, DC and spent a week at Code Pink House, went to rallies outside Washington, outside the White House, and went to Congress. It was during the week of the Kavanaugh hearings, so it was a very, very heated time. We were outside the Supreme Court and actually met Elizabeth Warren and all sorts of things. So Code Pink is doing a peace tour of Iran, which is the timing just on my way flying to the Limerick conference. So I have got the wonderful chance to visit Iran, and I've heard it's a wonderful country. And I plan to feedback as much as I can to World Beyond War and about what we can do. Like there's sanctions going on there, which are terrible for the people. And so we've got to continue to lobby and, you know, do all those things, write letters, educate the people, and talk to the politicians. It's just an ongoing mission all the time, isn't it, Greta?
Absolutely. Thanks for your work, Liz. Farraan, what is your recommendation for someone who wants to start up a chapter in their area?
I think just as was already mentioned, just find a couple of people and just get the ball rolling. Contact you, find out, you know, the resources that are available, and just start with one event, and then just keep building, and don't get just discouraged. You might need to, you know, do a few events and kind of learn from them and realign and to kind of figure out what works best in terms of getting people out, and just keep at it. That would be my recommendation.
Can you give people some examples of some of the tactics that you use to recruit for your events? Because I think you really used quite a diversity of tactics to bring in participants.
Yeah, so the events that we had this year, we weren't sure what was the best way to reach out, so we just took the approach of doing as many as we could. So we were putting up posters in libraries, in rec centers. We had flyers we were handing out at various areas where people are congregating. We had a Facebook event that we then boosted as well for about 10 days prior to each event. And I think actually, Greta, you put some ads in various free places on the website on different papers that have calendars, and so that was one of the ways as well. And I think we did put an ad in one paper, Common Ground. It's in the Vancouver area, and I believe that was pretty much what we did. And then just word of mouth, and just we use WhatsApp a lot as well, just having a canned message, and then we just send it out to our groups and ask people to keep forwarding it, and it would link up to the Facebook event from there as well.
Greta, can I just butt in, and as far as Farraan's amazing talk that he organised with Tamara, that's actually available online, isn't it?
Actually, yes, all of the 3 events we've had, the entire event was recorded, and it's on our Facebook Vancouver chapter page. There's a link to it on our YouTube channel, so you can watch the entire event.
Yeah, because I'd like to recommend that, because Tamara's an amazing speaker. She was at the Toronto conference, and her work is about linking militarism and climate change.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a couple more minutes before we're going to turn to audience Q&A and discussion. So we'll just go back around our circle again one more time. And if you guys have something that you want to add, starting with Al, any last thoughts to share?
Last thought is, please come join us if you're looking at starting a chapter. Eventually, we're going to win this, and war will be abolished and peace will reign.
Liz, any last thoughts before we turn to Q&A?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about conferences can be a good place to go to listen to people and talk to people and network, you know, that are linked in with various things. Like there was one that I went to on the nuclear bans treaty, and that was important. It's helpful to be with like-minded people, and of course the United Nations Association, that's another good organization, as well as the Parliamentarians for Nuclear Disarmament. There's an event that's coming up, a global event that's coming up in the end of October, which is called Move the Nuclear Weapons Money. It's been organized by a coalition, including Abolition 2000. And so there's events going on all around the world when we're looking at what we could do with money if we weren't wasting it on nuclear weapons, which of course is trillions and trillions. And we could actually have, you know, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals taking place instead of this. So, so we're working with all the groups that are organising that, and so it's a chance to grow the movement as well as being involved with something really worthwhile. So that's what I would guess emphasise. It's not just about reinventing the wheel; it's also about linking them with, you know, the existing peace-minded people and organizations.
Yeah, to add on to that, I would just say that intersectionality, as we call it, the cross-connection between issues, is a really big part of our work at World Beyond War. And if you go to our website, WorldBeyondWar.org, you can click on our different web pages that describe all of those different intersections of how war hurts the environment, how war erodes civil liberties, you know, how war impoverishes us. So yeah, definitely check that out. And that's a big part of our work, is looking holistically at the institution of war. Farraan, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just reinforce that, the existing peace groups and other groups, just reach out to them as well, and start going to their events and inviting them to your events. And I had another thought that I just forgot. Yeah, I'll mention it if it comes back to me.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was about it. Yeah.
All right, so Mark, turning it over to you. Can we start with questions from the Facebook page?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to open it up to questions on the Facebook page if anybody would like, but I actually wanted to start with a question here. So if anybody on the Facebook stream would like to ask a question, please go right ahead. Ryan had a question, but I actually wanted to ask one myself, something I was curious about when listening to each of you speak. When you are trying to draw somebody in, somebody who may be interested in anti-war activism, but not necessarily at the point of joining a chapter, I'm curious what types of messages or what types of issues do you think resonate the most? How have you succeeded in drawing people into your chapters? And what have you learned from trying to bring people into your chapters? And I guess we can go in the same order. I'd love to start with Al.
One quick thought comes to mind, and one of the things I try to do, and our kind of core group tries to do, is to remember that we are not a political organization. So we try as much as we can, and folks are aware of the political situation in the United States, but we try to avoid politics, at least at our meetings and in direct conversations. We find that issues of war, military spending, nuclear disarmament, those kinds of things cross all political lines. So that's what we try to stay focused on the message.
Wow. That, I wonder, one thing I'm conscious of is that each of you represent different areas. I wonder if it's something particularly in your area about the diverse mix of political attitudes, probably in Florida. I love the idea that it's not, the anti-war activism is not political. I'm used to thinking of it as political.
One other comment I would make is in this particular part of the country, United States, that is, we need to be careful not to appear that we are against veterans and so on. So we have a huge number of retired military folks here. So our stress is on topics that veterans can also relate to. Military spending being one of them, the hypocrisy and the cover-ups of war and some of those kinds of things. And certainly with our Veterans for Peace group, we try to get focused on issues related to the Veterans Administration and veterans health care that are important here in the United States.
Well, I think the idea that anti-war is a cause beyond politics is a great statement. I'm glad to hear that. Liz, what about you?
Yes, so just remind me of the question, Mark, please.
When you are trying to draw people into your chapter, when you are speaking to somebody who may or may not be yet persuaded that they want to devote their time and attention to this, what types of messages and issues do you find resonate with people and are able to break that barrier of motivating them to become involved?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question because everyone is pretty busy these days. Well, my secret weapon is food. And so in the first meeting that I had, we had a potluck meal at my home. And so everybody came along. I suppose there was maybe 15 or 20 people. And it was fun and it was enjoyable. And we sat around and, had a meal. And then I think I showed the film Scarred Lands and Wounded Lives. So so that's a really good thing. I think also, with meetings, is have time for refreshments and, good discussion. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, just to chime in, I would definitely concur with that. And a lot of the feedback that we get at our events is, have a more community vibe. So we've been trying to incorporate food, music, art making, different workshops. As you said, make it feel like you're networking, you're building community, and then combining that with education and activism as well.
I think it's pretty hard these days to feel like you're making a difference. And the peace movement over the last couple of decades has been struggling, I think, since the Iraq War. I think 20 million people marched against the Iraq War, and it happened anyway, so that was a hard time. But as Greta said, the creative arts are really important, and also I think nourishing ourselves so we don't get burnout and being with like-minded people. We're planning, some of us, a creative weekend coming up, and also to look at what we're doing, how we can do it better, because, as Einstein said, you can't solve the problems with the same thinking that has created them. So we're looking at a new approach that can really resonate with many people. Work in progress.
Great. And I'd like to ask the same question to Farraan.
Yeah, so basically it depends on who I'm communicating with. If it's somebody who's already kind of into the peace movement, for example, maybe with another group or has been in the past, then I usually kind of bring out the differentiation of what World Beyond War is focused on in terms of ending war and the actual institution of war. And just the name itself actually just triggers people. Like World Beyond War actually speaks to what the organization is about. So that always gets people talking when I say the organization's name. And that's the initial starting point with people that I'm trying to get involved that are already kind of interested. And then there's this goes back to what I forgot that I was going to mention by coincidence, which I now remember. Preaching to the choir is one of the things we always seem to be doing. So trying to reach out to the people who are not part of that choir. They're just living their lives and they don't know that there's an issue going on here, or maybe they think that something's wrong in the world, but they never really focused in this area. How to get those people involved is a little bit more difficult. And I think the tactic for that is connecting to like the issues that they're concerned with. For example, they might be into helping refugees. So you communicate to them that, hey, look, refugees are a symptom of war. And here, this is where we're trying to address the root cause here. So the kind of channeling it that way. Or if somebody's interested and active in anti-poverty type of movements, and again, same thing, I kind of link those things to war and show that if you put some energy into World Beyond War, you're actually addressing what you're already working on at a root cause. So that helps attract those type of people. And yeah, that's what comes to mind right now.
Great, thanks. So Ryan had asked actually about the book talk. I think the person's name was Tamara. And who?
Just to clarify, the book talk was in Philadelphia. Tamara
okay.
was a lecture that wasn't related to the book. So I can just answer that question really quickly. And I've been answering your other questions, Ryan, on the chat box. Anyone feel free to type in things in the chat box and I'll try to respond to you there as well. But just to talk about the book talk quickly. So that was a local author, David Swanson, our executive director, had interviewed him on David's radio show. So that's how we kind of got connected with him. His talk or his book and talk is about the 1%'s political mind games, and he uses militarism as one of the examples in the book. So it's talking about economic inequality, the 99% versus the 1%, and different ways that that manifests in our society, including through militarism. So that was the connection, and then we invited him, he's from Philadelphia, so we invited him to do the talk there. And I think, you know, a variety of books could work if you're looking to do something similar in your community, as long as there's some kind of cross connection back to militarism. Does that answer your question?
I think that, yeah. Okay, Ryan just said yes.
Great.
Cool. So we have a question from our friend John. He asked about the signatures that we collect. So one of the things we do at World Beyond War is we collect signatures and we collect email addresses. And John asked specifically, what do the people who give us signatures, do they get contacted? Are they on a listserv? How do you know if the addresses are working? I think Greta, you might best be able to answer this. And also, how do we take advantage of the contacts we make and the signature addresses?
Okay, let me try to answer this in simple terms. So anytime someone signs that paper pledge that Liz held up on her clipboard, there's small print underneath that says, you know, you will be added to World Beyond War's email list and you can unsubscribe at any time. So then we database those signatures and we add them to our email list. And so they get a variety of emails, such as our bi-weekly e-newsletter, which includes articles and events and updates from what we're doing around the world. They also will get emails about our conferences or about our petitions and other actions. And they'll get emails that are targeted to their area, as well as globally relevant things. So then when you're starting a chapter, then we can target an email just to your area. So often we'll do like 50-mile radius of a postal code, and invite those people to come to your event. So not everyone on the whole email list is getting invited to come to the Central Florida chapter event. And then the second piece of this is the chapter listservs. So a listserv, or a Google group as they're sometimes called, is basically a multi-way communication tool. So Al can send an email, hey, you want to have a chapter meeting soon, and this is going out to his Central Florida chapter listserv, and then anyone on that listserv can respond back and forth. And so that's much smaller, and that's just for the chapter. So, you know, when people become active in a chapter, we take those names from our email list or from events where you're collecting names, we put them on that chapter listserv as well. So there's the larger email list where they're getting all those emails I mentioned earlier, the newsletter, etc. And there's also the chapter listserv, which is the multi-way communication tool for chapters to help organize their events and organize their campaigns. And I can help you set up all these things if that didn't make sense, but that's part of my job is helping with the technology.
Great. Okay, and I'd like to open it up. Would anybody here like to ask a question? You can actually just unmute and go ahead and ask. Any takers? And or our other chapter coordinators here would like to say hi and tell us a little about what you do. Anyone?
Yeah, so feel free to unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, you can also unmute. If you press *6, that will unmute you. If you're on Zoom, you can just talk to us, or you can type in the chat box as well.
And also, while we wait, if I may, I'd love to call out Martha, because you mentioned that you actually just went to Iran. I'd love to hear how that went for you with Code Pink, I think you said.
Oh, it was a fantastic experience. I've been giving presentations here in Costa Rica on the trip to Iran, and also a trip shortly after that to Venezuela. But the trip to Iran was very surprising because of the reception we were given and the people we were able to talk with. The first day, we had almost a 2-hour meeting with Zafir, and we attended Parliament. We met with the opposition, advisor to the opposition. so many things. We went to a school for troubled youth, which people say, oh, you mean they allowed you to see the troubled youth? And yes, it was fantastic. We also, a member of our group developed a book with the names of all of the people in the airliner that was shot down. I think it was 200 or 300 with all of it. And we visited a museum for in commemoration of the Iraq-Iranian war. And the curator of the museum had no body below his waist because of that war. And all the staff were affected by the chemical weapons that were used that the US provided. But we gave that book to the museum, and it's now on display. That was Zafir's recommendation that would be a good home for that book. But it was an incredible experience. So I've been giving presentations to let people see what Iran is really like based on being there and meeting people. We had a great deal of freedom in the people we talked with. And the reception has been very good here in Costa Rica, both for Venezuela and for Iran.
Well, that's so great. I just think it's so encouraging that we managed to break past these barriers and do this. And Liz, we can't wait to hear what you do in Iran. And I hope you'll write an article for World Beyond War about it. Okay, I think, are there any other questions?
I was just going to quickly follow up on what Al was talking about in terms of being an apolitical organization, not picking sides in terms of politics. Because of our fiscally sponsored status, we can't legally even take sides, just to clarify that. We're not supporting one political party or any candidate. So we have, all of our chapters have to maintain that neutral status.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Last chance for any questions. Oh, hi, Don. Go ahead.
What's the best way for me to communicate with someone about some thoughts with someone on your staff?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
What is the best way? Maybe I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, I can hear you now. What is the best way?
What is?
Oh, now you're muted. Oh. Sorry, go ahead, Don. No, sorry, you are muted. We heard you before. Try again.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we do hear you now.
Okay. What is the best way to communicate with someone in your email address or best?
I heard, what is the best way to communicate with someone who is?
On your staff, is there an email, or what is the best way to get in touch with someone? Still not here?
Yes, are you saying to get in touch with World Beyond War to get started?
I'd like to talk with one of your staff people if possible.
Yes. Okay, let me put my contact information up on the screen. Can you see that?
I can, and I'm going to just write it down right now. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Where are you from, Don?
East Hartford, Connecticut.
Oh, great. Oh, I know some people around that area. Do you know the other folks who work in Connecticut?
Not too well. I'd be interested, but I don't know right now offhand.
Yeah, I was actually at an event at Middlesex Community College last year. There's a bunch of good people around there.
I'd just like to say we're so lucky with our staff with World Beyond War. We have a very, very small part-time staff of 4 or 5 people, but they're all excellent, and we're extremely fortunate having Greta doing her work because she's very efficient and very quick to respond to anything, and which is, we're very, very lucky because it makes the work so much easier, and yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Greta.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for questions, Greta.
All right. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. As I said, we are recording this, so I will email all of you with the recording afterwards, and feel free to get in touch with me. But thank you again for joining, and that's it. Mark, any last thoughts?
No, actually, there is one last question, just quickly about connections to the climate crisis movement, and specifically the strikes, September 20th to 27th. This is from John Conway. So I'm glad you mentioned that these strikes are taking place. Would anybody like to say anything about the connection between anti-war and the climate movement?
This is Al. I would say that one of our key people in our group is coordinating a busload of, and it's unfortunate they have to take a bus to go to a climate thing, but we've got a bunch of, we're hoping to have several busfuls of old people going to discuss climate and let's try to save the world.
Yeah.
And linking war to the environment.
Definitely.
Yeah, and this is what is so important about making the linkages and educating people that, you know, the military is one of the greatest polluters on the planet. So if we could just turn to different ways of solving conflicts and crises apart from using violence, and in fact, you know, if we realize that non-violent ways of resolving conflict are twice as effective as using violence, and that's according to research by people like Dr. Erica Chenoweth. That's another message. So as I mentioned earlier, linking in with the climate crisis, as well as the nuclear ban fiasco, because the nuclear weapons are also a very grave risk to our planet and our people. But that's a really good way of promoting the cause and working together.
I think, and awareness of refugees as well. These are all interlinked causes that, yeah, I think we all are aware of. Jan, did you want to say something?
Now that I'm unmuted, this was fascinating tonight. Climate strike on Friday, September 20th in New York City. Fight for Future is planning a rally and march in New York City, and People's Mobilization is supporting it, which is a collective of peace movement groups, including World Beyond War. So anyone who's in New York, please take a look at peoplesmob.org. We have 4 days of events in the city, of rallies, marches, and education forums.
Great, thanks, Jan. Yeah, we've been promoting that to our New York City membership. And for those of you on the phone, you didn't get to see my slide that had my contact information, so sorry about that, but you can email me if you just go to our website, WorldBeyondWar.org, and click on Contact Us. Also, my direct email is my name, Greta, Greta, @WorldBeyondWar.org. So thanks again for joining, for those of you on the phone, on Facebook, and on Zoom.